making memories.
With nobody but me.
Hutch, after this vacation, we need a vacation.
Nobody 2 is the latest bloody, violent action flick to hit theaters. The film is directed by Timo Giajanto, and this film is, of course, a sequel follow-up to Nobody, a movie that came out in March of 2021. And why that date is significant to me is that that's one of the first brand new releases to release in theaters after the global pandemic had shut everything down. I remember like yesterday going to the theater with my wife, sitting down in the theater. It was empty. It was just the two of us, but we were seeing a brand new movie on the big screen, and that got me all kinds of excited. And I say surprising because the premise of this film is a very unlikely assassin played by Bob Odenkirk does John Wick level of violence. And I was like, I don't know if Bob Odenkirk, the guy from Better Call Saul, can bring that level of violence. Oh, but my God, did they bring the violence in that film. I had a really fun time with it. It was one of the biggest surprises in a long time. And so when I heard they were making a Nobody 2, I got really excited to see this unlikely assassin going back into action. And so yesterday I went and saw Nobody 2, and I will get to my review for it here in a second, but sitting down in the theater yesterday, watching Nobody 2 on the big screen reminded me of that time when we had no movies in theaters because the world was completely shut down, where theaters were afraid to open. And it was just so nice that we live in a world now where movies come out 2, 3, 4 movies a weekend. Sometimes you don't have enough time to see all the movies that are coming out. And then on top of the releases in theaters, you have streaming films. And it's just nice that we're back to movies coming out all the time. And again, it just reminded me of that time in 2021 where I was excited to go see Nobody because it was a brand new release in theaters. I probably would have seen anything releasing in theaters that day. It just turned out to be the movie Nobody that just turned out to be surprisingly awesome. And again, it just kind of reminded me of what we didn't have back then and how we have so much of it now. And I love the movie going experience, so I just wanted to throw that in there. All right, let's do the review for Nobody 2.
Here we go.
That is one big pile of shit.
No, I shot him. Bullets in the fall killed him.
So Nobody 2 once again brings back Bob Odenkirk as the character of Hutch, and Hutch is a very unlikely assassin. And the reason I say he's an unlikely assassin is this guy does not look like an assassin at all. He looks like a guy who lives a regular life. He lives in a normal neighborhood, in a nice house with his wife, who's a realtor, with his kids who go to the local schools. Like, nothing about this guy looks like he's a deadly assassin. He looks like maybe a lawyer, maybe somebody you would call. I'll leave it at that. I'm going to stop making those references. The point is, this guy doesn't look like somebody who would be a deadly assassin, but we know from the first film that he's wrapped up in all these different criminal organizations, and he is a badass assassin. And the movie reminds you of that at the kickoff with this montage of him going through and killing all of these different criminals. Now, the reason he's doing that is actually to pay off a debt from the first film, and he's getting burned out. He's doing mission after mission after mission for these different criminal organizations, and he's had enough. He needs a break. He feels very distant from his wife and his kids. He feels like he's been working too much. They feel very distant from him. So he and his wife and his kids and grandpa, played once again by Christopher Lloyd, all get in the family car and they go to an amusement park to get away from everyday life. They go on a family vacation where there's going to be no death, no killing, just family time. But that is when they run into another criminal organization that puts Hutch right in the middle of a big feud between these different criminals, and Hutch will have to kill his way out to save not only himself, but his entire family this time around. And that is the best synopsis that I can give you for Nobody 2. If that sounds like a fun time, well, this movie is currently playing in theaters. If you're a big action fan, you should go check this out on the biggest screen possible. Now, I am going to get into my positives and my negatives for Nobody 2 here in a second, but before I do that, if this is the first time you found my channel, well, I would love for you guys to hit that subscribe button, check out all the different content that I have, whether you like movie reviews, Blu-ray talk, or even ranked list videos. I've got a little bit of everything on my channel, and I'd love for you guys to check it out. All right, let's get into my positives and my negatives for Nobody 2.
I told you. I'm on fucking vacation!
Now, my first positive for this movie shouldn't come as any surprise. We are talking about the action in this movie. Once again, you get John Wick level of action in sort of a goofy situation. See, the John Wick movies are extremely serious. You've got this assassin empire all going after one man. He's got to fight and kill his way out of different situations. And that's kind of what's going on here, but they're doing it at an amusement park. They're setting up booby traps at this amusement park. Like, there's things that they're doing at this amusement park that you would never see in a John Wick film, but they get to do it here because it's got a little bit goofier of an edge, since the entire premise of this film is nobody takes this guy serious until they're getting hit in the face. And that is what happens in this movie over and over and over. They get into little situations with people at the amusement park where people don't take him serious. Maybe they push him or his kids around, and then he beats the absolute hell out of them with things in an arcade. And that's a really fun action moment. But then you've got these criminal organizations who look into his past, and of course, everything's hidden. They have no idea who he really is, so they don't take him serious, only for him to kill each and every single one of them in brutal, violent ways, sometimes hand-to-hand combat, sometimes with gun fu. Like, you get so many fun moments in this movie of action, different set pieces that are fun. Obviously, the third act, you have this big amusement park action scene that's a lot of fun, but peppered in throughout the film, you get these little action scenes, whether it's the montage at the beginning, a moment in an arcade, or a moment on a boat. Like, you get these different action scenes that are a lot of fun, and so that has to be my first positive for this movie, because all of those action scenes worked for me. My next positive for this movie is going to be the funny, quirky comedy that they're once again able to inject into this franchise, because you've got this very unserious premise. A guy who doesn't look like an assassin who can actually kick your ass. Nobody takes him serious until he's punching you in the mouth, and that's very evident in one scene when he's on a boat and these four guys are surrounding him and he starts kicking all of their asses. They are able to throw him overboard at one point, and they go to the guy who got the group together and they grab him and they're like, "I thought you said this guy was nobody. I thought you said that he wasn't anybody that we had to worry about. He was just a regular tourist." And the guy's like, that's the information I had. And it just leads to a very funny moment when at that point Hutch grabs onto the railing of the boat, climbs back up, and just beats the hell out of these guys. So again, a lot of the humor is injected through the action scenes because these guys have no idea what they're running into. And my final positive for this movie is the emotion they're able to put into this movie based on Hutch's relationship with so many people in this film. Like, so many people in this movie care about Hutch, and I think that goes into that he doesn't look like an assassin. Like, he's not this James Bond type. He's just an average regular guy with average regular kids, and it's really nice to see that emotion brought out of this film. For instance, at one point, his daughter gets smacked in the back of the head by an adult man, and at that point, your blood boils because you know he cares about his daughter so much. But he also doesn't want to fight in front of his daughter, so he kind of scoots his daughter away from the situation. And then he goes back and beats his ass. But the point I'm making here is that the emotion they're able to bring out of the characters in this movie, all basically out of loving Hutch, whether it's the relationship between him and his dad, him and his brother, him and his wife, him and his kids. Like, all these people have this emotional tie to Hutch. He means so much to them, and you can feel that emotion by the end of this movie from all the different characters. I thought they were able to do that emotion really well with these characters, even though they didn't really progress the characters, and we'll talk about my negatives here in a second. I did think the emotional side of these characters resonated with me. That'll do it for my positives. Now we have to move on to my negatives, and my first negative for this movie is the main villain of this film, Lindina, played by Sharon Stone. Now, Lindina is this head of a criminal organization that runs the bulk of their operation out of this amusement park, so when Hutch and his family accidentally disrupt things at this amusement park, well, that pisses her off because that interferes with her business, and so now her and her soldiers are on their way to this amusement park to kill each and every person that's there. And so the movie starts with her as being this imposing force, this ruthless killer. She got to the head of this criminal organization because she's willing to get her own hands dirty if necessary. That's how the movie starts. And if that's how they had continued on with her character, then her character probably would have been in my positives. But right at the halfway point of this movie, they're like, by the way, she's also crazy and insane. And we're going to show you how crazy and insane she is by having her do a dance. And that immediately took away all of her aura. Like, immediately when I saw her do this dance in front of her soldiers as she was getting ready to go to the amusement park, I was taken out of that moment. I was like, oh, so she's just another throwaway villain. And that's what she ends up being. She never comes off as this imposing force after that moment, because after that moment, you're just like, oh, well, she's just a goofy, crazy character. I've seen that done so many times before. And one more point I'll make about this character is actually a comparison to a character from the John Wick universe. It is hard to not make comparisons between these two franchises. So if we take the character of Lindina and we put her against the character of somebody like the Adjudicator from John Wick Chapter 3, somebody who walked into the Continental Hotel, walked right up to Winston and told him, this is what you're going to do. She never lost her aura throughout that entire film. When she was told that we're not going to do it, she goes out and gets a bunch of assassins. She comes back with a bunch of soldiers. And even when John Wick and crew are killing all of those soldiers and ruining her plans, she still seems like she's in complete control of her situation. And I wish they had done that with this character. I wish they had never let this character go into a weird, goofy place, because the movie already has a weird, goofy premise with the character of Hutch, and that's where the premise should have been. But the fact that they were like, oh no, now the villain has to be that much weirder, that much crazier, that much zanier, she really didn't. And so that is a negative for me, because I thought you could have had a really good villain brought into this film. Instead, you just get this unhinged lunatic, which didn't really vibe with the rest of the movie. And my other negative for this movie is going to be that there's zero world building done. They don't build into this assassin world any more than you already knew about from the first film. Like in the first film, you're introduced to Hutch, you're introduced to this world of assassins, these criminal organizations, and I would have liked to expand on that in this film, much like the John Wick franchise was able to do very successfully throughout its 4 movies, where they were able to build that universe over and over again because they kept expanding the lore. But in this film, it feels very condensed. It feels like, hey, you know about this universe where there's assassins and criminals? Good, because we're not going to build on that anymore. We're just going to take a break from the main storyline. Like if they wanted to take a break from the world building, this should have been a storyline they used in part 3 or part 4, but instead you put it in part 2, which completely hits the brakes on telling any new stories within this universe. Yes, you get an adventure with Hutch and his family. Yes, you get to see bad guys versus good guys. You get some great action scenes, but they never build on this assassin world that we were introduced to in the first film. So again, it just feels like they were like, okay, you liked the first movie? We're going to give you that again, but this time on vacation. Like we're not going to build on anything we've given you in the past. And that was too bad. I would have liked a little bit of world building. I'd like to have seen this expand a little bit more. And who knows, maybe they'll do that in a third film, but I think that was the wrong way to go for this movie. I think this movie should have expanded on the lore of this assassin universe. I guess you could make the case there's a little bit at the beginning of this film when you find out that Hutch is not off the hook for the things he did in the first movie, and he is paying back his debt. So there's a little bit there, but that's just maybe the first 20 minutes of this movie, maybe. From the rest of the movie, it's just, we're at an amusement park, we're fighting bad guys. And I wish you could have had just a little bit bigger of a look at this universe that we've been introduced to. Overall, Nobody 2 was a fun late summer action flick, a movie that I would recommend to people who like hyper-violent action movies, or if you're a big fan of that original Nobody film, I think you can get a lot of enjoyment out of this film. For me personally, it's a one and done. Like I watched it once, I'm glad I did, but it's not something I think I'll ever go back to in the future. Maybe if they make a third movie, I'll go back and rewatch the franchise, but I don't see myself just putting on Nobody 2 in the future personally. For me, it was good, but it wasn't great. But as always, guys, those are just my opinions because that's my review for Nobody 2. Have you had a chance to see this film yet? If you have, let me know in the comment section down below. Let me know where we agree or disagree. I love talking movies with you guys. And finally, guys, if you like this video, don't forget to hit that like button because it helps the video, it helps the channel, and it helps me right here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. All right, guys, we got to the end of my Nobody 2 review. Hope you guys enjoyed this review. I've had a really fun time reviewing movies this summer. We have several movies left to come out in August, and I'm looking forward to watching and reviewing those in the future. Until that time, if you want to check out any of the other content on my channel, well, I've got all of my best and worst of 2025 right there, and I've got all of my 2025 movie reviews right there.